Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, March 7th, 2018, and once again, the Kagro in the Morning Show is right about everything, or at least if we cherry pick carefully enough, we can claim to be right about everything. And I don't know how we would have done on all the things that we refused to pick a winner on, because we wanted to maintain our perfect record of being right on everything. We got a couple comments to relay to you. Daily Coast Radio is live now. That should be our first and only comment each morning as Bill starts us off from Portland, Maine with a kickoff tweet. Daily Coast Radio is live now. Be the 10th caller. And Kagro X, hi, that's me, will give you a free pass on the Hatch Act violation of your choice. So I can only do one. Two will get you in trouble, obviously. Kellyanne Conway, yesterday's news, as usual. Found to have violated. Found. We were just walking along the street and found out on the ground that Kellyanne Conway was guilty of 2 Hatch Act violations. We knew that that was the case. The call finally made by the Office of Special Counsel yesterday. The White House issuing statement, no, she didn't. And that's basically where it now stands. The Office of the Special Counsel, actually those empowered to make the decision about whether or not a Hatch Act violation occurred, it did. They found that to be the case twice. And handing that off now to the White House, the process dictates that the White House decide what to do about it, which is to say we don't have a law that's prohibits these things. If the White House violates them and then you say, I caught you violating it, now pick a punishment, and they are entitled to pick nothing because we're actually pro-grift and a bunch of thieves. We are not going to punish these 2 Hatch Act violations. But that's not enough for these guys. They've got to grub for more. So they put out the statement that says, no, she didn't violate the Hatch Act, and that's why we're not punishing her. No, she did. It's not up to you to say she didn't. It's just up to you to say that you're not going to do anything about it, and that is what is happening. But, okay, so I've pointed that out, and now we're factually correct, and they're factually incorrect. What else are we going to do about it? And the answer is nothing. There's nothing else to do. So the show's over, and we can all go home now. There is no law. LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. And it was a stupid law to begin with, to be honest. I mean, good idea, just poorly designed, as a lot of our laws regarding things like this are. There's this assumption that being found to have violated it would be enough to drive a conscientious person out of government. But there aren't any conscientious people in this government, or at least in this executive branch of this government, and so that's not working anymore. Let's see, other fun items in the news this morning. There's plenty. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Greg Dworkin is scheduled to be with us, and I see that he has already sent along a raft of stories. I should probably just take a quick look and make sure I don't step on any of the mines already laid out there. But I think that would be difficult to do. It's all there. Let's see. Is Stormy Daniels in the roundup? I mean, at this point, things are so crazy. You might as well, why bother? Why put Stormy Daniels in the roundup? The facts of the matter, I don't even think it's in here because it's like too stupid of a thing to include in a serious roundup. So I'll take care of it, but I'll perhaps take care of it. Well, here the music tells us Greg Dworkin is on his way. Oh, maybe he was calling to say, I was just about to put Stormy Daniels in there. Or, no, I'm not going to put that in there. That's horrible. That's insubstantive and stupid, and we shouldn't include it. She's suing Trump. So she's putting herself back in it. She's suing Trump, which happens to all, which president doesn't get sued by a porn star, right? He neglected to, or in fact, it's now said he did by design. He did not sign the non-disclosure agreement that went along with the $130,000 payment, apparently out of a fear that if Stormy Daniels was running around with a signed document that said, I am hereby paying you $130,000 to not tell anyone that we had sex, signed Donald Trump, that could be a problem for him. And good foresight, I think, on that one. And as I understand it, they signed an agreement with some pseudonyms. She's Peggy Peterson. Remember that one? And I think we now, for the first time, have learned his pseudonym, and I've already forgotten it, but it's a D. David, I don't even remember what it is. We'll figure it out. So she's suing. She says they have no legally binding NDA.
It's Donald Trump.
It might as well be. It's not very creative.
Because it's in there as DD.
Yeah. And of course, she's in there as PP, so plenty of people pointing out that the PP tape does exist. But I think, though, the NDA also covers some things we didn't expect, which may or may not exist, but the fact that they're in there, I mean...
I got that.
Yeah,
I even got that in the roundup. Hi, this is Greg working with my friend David Waldman.
That guy.
He's not hearing voices. I actually joined the call.
Right. Yes, I I kind of said that.
Matt Ortega's tweet there I
have. Whose tweet?
Matt Ortega.
Matt Ortega. Oh, okay. Good. Well, I'll find that one. And so anyway, she's suing, and whether it works or not, she's in the news. So that's good. I like that. She may have a case, she may not. I don't care. We're talking about Stormy Daniels again, and that's fine by me. And it's not even the worst news for Donald Trump. Well, it's hard to tell what's the worst news. What do you think is the worst news?
The worst news is Gary Cohn is leaving.
Okay. Yes. Oh, right.
And he's getting us into a trade war, which is going to kill everybody. But
trade wars often, which you generally don't kill people.
Yeah,
but this one could, I guess.
His are bigger and better. This Matt Ortega piece, it says the non-disclosure agreement between Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump. Remember, Stormy Daniels is PP, the letters, right, and Donald Trump is DD.
Yes.
Includes mention of certain still images and or text messages.
Right. That's it.
Right, here it is. It's under 2.0 recitals. These are not piano recitals. Oh. 2.1. Prior to entering into this agreement, PP came into possession of certain confidential information, which is in scare quotes, pertaining to DD, as more fully defined below, only some of which is in tangible form, which includes but not limited to certain still images and or text messages which were authored by or relate to DD, collectively known as the property and exhibit 1.
Okay.
In lawyer talk.
I found this video I wanted to just roll in the background. You can go ahead. I'm just going to roll this constantly.
So anyway, that was the whole thing. So first of all, I think it's been established in the Clinton era that a president can be sued. Whether or not they can be indicted is a different story.
Yes.
That's arguable, but they can be sued.
Okay.
So she's suing him.
Well, that is excellent, and it's a great suit. I did see, I'll have to pull up the tweet here, but somebody was pointing out, and I think it was Kate Sherrill who had forwarded it. Oh, yeah, Susan Simpson, whose tweet storms and posts we have read at her blog, The View from LL2. She's a pretty savvy analyst, I've found, and she says this lawsuit is a work of legal art. If you are Trump, do you, A, argue that your agreement to pay hush money to the porn star was a valid and legally enforceable contract? Or do you, B, argue that there is no contract and the porn star is free to talk about your affair? So it's not that many good choices for Donald Trump in dealing with this suit.
Huh. Well, maybe it is a work of art. I'm going to give you another work of art that's right at the bottom of the list that I say. I'm just throwing it in there.
All right.
And it's a billboard, which Claude Taylor put together, True Facts Stated on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And he's actually raising money and putting billboards up all over the country. This one happens to be in Texas, near Dallas.
Okay, Dallas.
It's a big picture of Ted Cruz, and the billboard says, I just don't like this guy, George W. Bush. And then underneath in big banner says, nobody likes Ted Cruz.
You know what? That's true, and it used to be far more obvious. And now there's a more hated person in America, but he used to be the guy.
Well, people still hate him, so let's not take anything away from him.
All right. I think
Now,
that's fair.
that perhaps is a nice intro into the Dallas primary that took place yesterday. I think that we should at least mention that.
Okay.
And
Just do
Dave
it.
Wasserman pointed out, Democrats accounted for about 40% of all Texas primary votes cast this year, and it's up from 29 in 2014. It's up from 31% in 2010, but not quite as high as the 44% in 2006. So despite Trump's mediocre standing in Texas, it's still a pretty Republican state.
Yeah, okay.
So what happened yesterday is that Beto O'Rourke won,
Yeah.
and there were a bunch of other local primaries as well, which are important. And the Democrats fielded a pretty good field, and overall they did fine.
Important.
But
okay.
if you're looking at the big race, the marquee race between O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, everybody hates Ted Cruz, but he's still got a 2 out of 3 chance of winning.
Oh.
How could it be that the Democrats did so well, except overall they didn't do that well? And Holt Lackey tweets this, which I think is very good. I think it's pretty simple, and it also helps explain the gerrymandering / vote with your feet where you live kind of theory. His grand unifying theory to explain all 2017, 2018 votes from Kansas 4 through Texas is this: cities and suburbs are bluer and more energized, but the exurbs in the rural areas are just as red as ever. So it explains generic ballot numbers, why you need and the Democrats are doing quite well in the latest generic ballots. Morning Consult, for example, which is a Republican-leaning poll, went from a +2 to a +7, for example, in this morning's version. We'll get to that because it has some interesting things about Trump and his reelect. But the point is that you need a 7 or 8 point lead in the actual ballot for Democrats to win the House because of this. In Texas, for example, there was a huge Democratic turnout in the 15 biggest counties where all the people live.
Okay.
That was outweighed by the usual Republican turnout from the 239 smaller counties.
Okay.
So the rural areas stay red.
Yeah.
The urban areas and suburban areas are blue, more blue than ever. Those numbers go up, but in Texas you still lose because you got all those other people. Now, writ large, it also, if you want to strain at the analogy, it's an example of how you can gin your own base up and still lose.
That does happen.
It does. And so there are people that are advocating, don't even talk to Republicans, don't talk to independents, don't bother even talking to anybody who made a mistake voting for Trump. Just talk to your own people and get them out and we win. No, that's not how it works. What you'll do is you'll get larger wins in the areas that you already are winning in, if that's what you do. But the marginal areas, the swing areas, the slightly Republican areas, you need to get out some Republican vote and switch them to your side or get them to stay home.
Yeah.
If you want to win those areas.
In the House, at least.
In the House. We're talking about the House, yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's true, and it's not so in the Senate, and sometimes that's why
statewide Ted Cruz is going to win, even though nobody likes him.
I don't like him, but I'm not.
I don't like him either. In
Texas.
fact, there are billboards that say that.
Yes.
The other thing that's I think important to stress, and the big news out of the Texas primary, which Bloomberg, Jonathan Bernstein, political scientist writing in Bloomberg notes, there are strong signs that a lot of Democratic voters are looking for a woman to support this year, and there's a lot of women running.
That's good.
Okay? Female candidates outperformed expectations at the ballot box and outperformed their fundraising hauls. And as I write this, the votes are still being counted, and I'll include a caveat. This is just based on a look at the raw votes, but there are strong signs that a lot of Democratic voters are looking for a woman to support this year. It's hard to tell chicken and egg. There's a lot of women running.
Yes.
So if that's your choice, maybe that's who you vote for, which is different than looking for a woman to vote for.
All right.
Right? If you have 9 women running against a man and one of the women wins, that doesn't necessarily mean you were looking for a woman to vote for. But out of those 10 candidates, you found the one you liked, and she was a woman, and more likely because 9 out of 10 were.
Well, yes, I guess. But it is good that there are so many running.
Fantastic. And I say this because people will cite the generic ballot, or they'll cite Trump's approval rating, which in the latest Morning Consult poll, for example, has him losing by 8 to a generic Democrat. And for re-election in 2020. And the point there is that he breaks even with men, but is down 15 points with women. So we know that there is a gender gap. We know that. We know that women disprefer Republicans and don't like Donald Trump way more than the men do. But it isn't just about those generic ballot type things or the gender gap that you see in polls. It's the fact that women are running.
Yes. Okay.
It's both. It's that there's not only more enthusiasm for Democrats from women, but there are more women running to be Democrats. And so it's a combo that is very, very good for 2018. Women do tend to vote in the Democratic primaries. We know that sometimes 55, 60% of the voters are women. And, that's all important.
I wonder what kind of campaign, or whether there'll be a difference in the way the campaign shapes up if there are more rather than, versus less women nominated who end up as the candidates, whether that would affect the sort of the way the campaign shapes up in these House races if women candidates are running. And
Republican women run like Republicans.
Oh, yes. Well, that I expect. Democratic women, it'll be interesting. If we nominate a whole slew of them, I expect we'll see some punditry from out of Washington saying, okay, that's all well and good, but remember, you don't, or you can't, they'll say, you can't just run against Trump. You can't just be against Trump. You got to have a positive message, and that's always true to an extent. I have some suspicion it might be overdone, perhaps.
Way overdone. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take you to a
all right. Let's go.
What's called an ebook.
Oh, is it about horses? I read about that.
No,
horse ebooks.
It's a free ebook from political scientist G. Elliott Morris. I posted this on Monday.
Okay.
It's actually rather amusing.
G. Elliott. It was always
G. Elliott Morris.
Oh, it's a good nickname for him. All right.
Right. So it's basically a pie graph. All right, and a tiny slice of the pie is in red, but the whole 85% of the rest of the pie is in blue.
Yeah.
And here's this entire ebook. It's free, so you can download it. And the graph is of what Democrats should say to flip control of the House. And the 85% blue area on the pie is Trump is bad. And the 15% slice in red is Trump is bad, but in red.
Yes, I remember this one now.
That's how you have to. All the other stuff is garbage. Everybody's running against Trump. He's awful. And you know what? It's enough to win, so shut up.
It might just be. I know there's, traditional ways of approaching campaigns and conventional wisdom.
You have to have a local candidate. Remember, we talked about this in Virginia. You want to talk about local traffic conditions.
True.
And you want to talk about whether or not you can get to work or whether that road needs to be widened. That's more important than whether or not your sexual orientation happens to be different than a cis man. But that's besides the point.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to do that. That's like a given. That's like a true but when you add, and by the way, Trump sucks. Well, that's enough.
All right. Well, I hope so. That's the way I'd be running.
Traffic plus Trump, that's a winner in Virginia.
Okay. Yeah. And you know what? You can have some of these billboards. People would then be sitting in traffic looking at them. We don't have billboards.
I have three things I want to say. I have some issues that are important locally. Trump is bad.
And
I'm not Ted Cruz.
All right.
So that's enough.
It's like a 5-point plan practically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
All right. So we have that. Let's talk about tariffs a little bit. There was this fantastic headline I have to give you because it's just so classic. It's from City AM. And it's talking about the trade war that Trump wants to launch.
All right.
And the headline is, hit the Chevy with a levy, tax your whiskey and rye.
What? Why?
Why?
Because levy, I guess.
Europe is threatening to retaliate in those areas.
Oh, are they going to tax? Okay.
They're going to tax bourbon because it's Mitch McConnell's area.
That's wise. He's against this tariff, but that's good. Irritating.
Right? They're going to do Harleys because that hits Paul Ryan.
Oh, all right.
I mean, they're actually singling out congressional leaders.
That's very Trumpy of them.
Yeah, it is. But I love the headline. I just thought it was really cool.
Okay. Well.
And you, who used to work and write ad copy, I just thought you'd really appreciate that.
I do. I just couldn't figure out why. I was like, oh, that's clever. I hope there's a reason behind it. And there was.
It's a business headline.
Okay.
EU doubles down on threat to retaliate as Trump's trade war heats up.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly right.
He's against unions, as you know, so that's why the European Union bothers him so much.
So let's do the Trump poll, and then let's do the tariff poll. So the Morning Consult poll on Trump. President Donald Trump's new campaign manager has his work cut out for him. After naming Brad Parscale to run his reelection effort, Trump is 8 points behind a generic Democrat, 44-36. Nearly 1 in 5 voters are undecided. Male voters evenly split. Female voters, Democrats have a 15-point lead. But here's the thing. Despite Trump's poor poll numbers, Republicans aren't better off without him. As for whom they would vote between a generic non-Trump Republican and the generic Democrat, it's 42-28.
Oh.
That's a 14-point lead, by the way.
Okay. Well, thanks for the math.
Right? Trump supporters are lukewarm about voting for any Republican presidential candidate other than Donald Trump, said Kyle Drop, Morning Consult's co-founder and chief research officer.
That seems true enough.
But think of the implications for 2018 in November. Trump is not on the ballot.
Right. And only, you can be a Trump hugger, certainly, but can't be Trump. And it doesn't work the same. That's true.
Right. And this is the poll that has the generic ballot up. Democrats leading the generic ballot is up to 7 points, and this is a very Trumpian poll. The president's approval rating is 43, down from 46. And so it's just, in general, not good for Trump, and it's not good for the Republicans. And yesterday, Quinnipiac had their own poll that came out. Americans oppose 50-31% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and disagree 64-28 with President Donald Trump's claim that a trade war would be good for the U.S. Every listed party, gender, education, age, and racial group opposes steel and aluminum tariffs, except Republicans, who support tariffs by a lackluster 58-20, and white voters with no college degree, no college, divided 42-40. So they divide on the tariffs. Remember, the tariffs were done for one reason and one reason only, to try to win Pennsylvania 18 next week.
Oh.
Okay, because it has no other function. And that's important.
No,
and as far as the tax cut, there's a piece in the New York Times today. At Sliders Tavern, this is in Ohio, Matt Casey, a machinist, drank a couple of beers as he waited for burgers to take home for dinner. His tab was about equal to the increase in his take-home pay after President Trump's tax cut found his way into the nation's paycheck.
How long did it take to cook those burgers?
His underwhelmed reaction was not what Republicans had in mind. The white working-class voters in the industrial Midwest who helped put Mr. Trump in the White House are now seeing the extra cash from the tax cut, the president's signature domestic policy achievement, and the foundation for Republican election hopes in November. It is so underwhelming that the GOP actually is pulling their tax cut ads from Pennsylvania 18 because it's not working. Next week, the Democrat Conor Lamb is running even with the Republican, and this is in a district that went for Trump's by something like 19 points. So they're panicked that they're going to wind up losing next week. Mm-hmm. This is a John Ossoff thing. The fact that it's even close is the story.
I guess so.
The Republicans may pull it off, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like the Democrat has the big mo. So the Republicans go in with these huge ad buys, trying to convince these Trump area voters that the tax cut is everything. It's everything you ever wanted. And they're going, whatever. It's not working. They pull the ads. Now they're running against immigration.
Okay, that might work better.
It might. But the point is that this touted tax cut, which is going to save it's not working.
Yeah.
And when Nancy Pelosi said you're just getting crumbs, that guy in Ohio buying the beers and the burgers agrees with her.
Yeah, that didn't even cover one of the beers, the increase that you might got. We heard the story about people getting $1.50 more in their paychecks if they look at them.
It isn't working in that sense. So you have the polling that supports that. You have the observations. And, you really have to put the whole thing together. The Quinnipiac says most Republicans like what Trump is doing on tariffs and everybody else doesn't. So good luck, congressional GOP, on this one.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just,
Good
it's
luck.
not, the tariffs aren't the winner. The tax thing isn't the winner. And enthusiasm is up for Democrats. The generic ballot is rising
Right.
for Democrats. And it still looks the same as it's looked for months. This isn't a guarantee. It's a modest lead for Democrats, as Nate Silver will often point out, although I think that misses a lot about the actual results, which is what we're learning from all of these specials and pre-November 2018 races. So the Democrats are in a pretty good position, and that assumes everything stays the way it is right now. You start tariffs and a trade war, and you find products like beer, which is, in metal containers, going up in price. And then you have whatever Bobby Three Sticks comes up with in terms of Donald Trump colluding with the Russians, which looks actually more and more central to what he's looking at. And I don't really see how the Republicans like the position that they're in right now.
I don't know, and it's hard to believe that they would. And I'm very concerned about this guy who had the beers with the burgers now. That's a lot of beer to drink while you're waiting for burgers to cook. These are
not in the
gigantic
Midwest.
burgers.
Not in the heartland.
No, I guess true. I mean, is he driving home with the burgers? Is he walking? I don't know. I'm a little worried, but I'm sure he made it fine. But still. Okay. And by the way, draft beer comes in metal containers too. Those kegs are steel.
Yeah, well,
Are they
it's
steel
the only
or
kind of
aluminum?
draft I liked. When I was young, there was a Vietnam draft. We didn't like that as much. Draft beer,
Right.
that's much, much better.
That's true. People
All
like
right,
that
we're
better.
coming up
Yes.
on the break here.
We
according
are,
to
in
my
fact.
blog. Hey, was that great timing?
That
or what?
was great timing.
When
Terrible
we get
timing
back,
for me.
I want to talk to you about Soledad O'Brien and Chris Cillizza.
Okay, I think that would be... Yeah, that's a big topic, too. Everybody was on Salissa's case, so we should go there, too. We'll do that after the break. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. We've come back with a little extra music still pending. We'll just let it run out in the background. But yeah, we're back, and now I've found my phone, and that's the reason why we were late with the break music. The alarm didn't go off because it was across the room and never set. It's one of the things I left behind today. Technical glitch. But Greg Dworkin is still here. And time now to
You can listen to
pile
me
on
or
with
you can
Chris
listen to your
Cillizza.
phone, but you can't
Right,
do both.
yeah, right. Who are you going to believe? Your lying ears or Greg Dworkin? And the answer is better be the Dworkin because he was
Gotta be
watching
me.
the clock. Yeah, okay. Chris Cillizza.
So Chris
turns out he's
Cillizza
terrible.
puts this piece on CNN Politics. It's an awful piece. It's called "Donald Trump is producing the greatest reality show ever."
He is not.
And, he talks about the fact that he said the Oscars suck, but I'm the star. He said that in so many words in a tweet. And Cillizza riffs off of this and talks about the fact that that we're just, we're all watching. The medium and long-term impact of running a White House and therefore a country on the principles of reality TV remain to be seen. People can't tear their eyes from the spectacle, but lots and lots of them say they don't like what they see. And Trump's betting in a few years people will renew the show. And so he's relating this to reality TV, but reality TV is about people that really don't affect your lives.
That is
It's
true.
escapism. That's the whole point, which Cillizza completely misses. Soledad O'Brien takes him to task on that and says that was a terrible piece. And Cillizza says, did you actually read the piece? And Soledad O'Brien says, I read the whole thing. And Cillizza says, then I don't get your criticism. And Soledad said, well, the only way my criticism would make sense is if I didn't read your article. That doesn't make any sense.
You can't criticize him.
And Solizza says, no, I don't have any idea what your criticism is, that the piece is terrible. And Soledad O'Brien explains it to him. She says, it's not accurate. It's not funny. It's not clever. It's not analysis. It's facile. It shows an actual lack of understanding of reality TV. I can't believe I'm typing that. It's mediocre. It's a time when viewers need to understand what's going on at the highest levels of government.
Yes, but instead we got, hey, it's a show. Whee!
Right.
Yeah.
So while all this is going on, I go to Wikipedia, and a fellow named Own Rules types or tweets this screenshot of Wikipedia, which may have been changed since then. And it's a bio of Chris Solizza.
Okay.
And there's two parts in here that are of note. In passing interest, it has his early life and education. He was born and raised in Marlborough, Connecticut, and attended the Loomis Chaffee School, which he often refers to jokingly as the Loomis Chaffee School for the Rich, an independent boarding school in Windsor, Connecticut. And so, he does come from privilege. And then it has a picture of him, and it says, born, Christopher Michael Solizza, February 20th, 1976, age 42. Died March 6, 2018. Twitter, cause of death, Soledad O'Brien.
He's been slain.
Occupation journalist, but that's in scare quotes.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So that's probably been changed by now. 76, jeez. Wow. Okay. Well, that explains a little bit, I guess. Yeah, he's he very frequently writes things that make people say he's terrible, and I don't think he's good. I don't know. Maybe I guess I think he's terrible too. But I keep an eye on what he's doing because it's important to know what this terrible person is telling other people who don't have time to figure out he's terrible, and rebut it from time to time.
Our friend Charles Gaba, Brain Rap, who does a lot of the health stuff, collected some of Chris's classic tweets just to put together.
Stuff.
For example, this one. Is there a fan blowing on Ivanka, or does her hair just do that?
Oh, right.
Ivanka Trump is the best Trump, not close. Golly, Ivanka Trump is just so damn impressive, and Ivanka is such a boss. So that's a collection of Solizza quotes. And, there's your objective journalist right there.
If she worked at the Washington Post instead of the White House, Chris Solizza would be fired for sexual harassment.
Pretty much.
That's amazing. It is very creepy, and he really should have kept it to himself. And he's 42. But, she's not that much younger than him. I mean, I guess it's not inappropriate.
I'm not a fan.
Sense,
I just don't find the analysis to be particularly deep.
It rarely is.
And, it's more along the lines of, the policy doesn't make any difference. What really matters is the optics, and so the Republicans won the week.
That is essentially...
That could be every single column he ever wrote in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I guess that's really it. And I mean, that and I remember so many other dumb things. Yeah, he just doesn't really dig in ways that I don't know, are we not used to that? Or is it just
he wrote for the Washington Post for a long time for the Fix. And so you'd expect the paper to do a little bit more trenchant and cogent analysis, which it does. Whether you're talking about Dave Weigel, or whether you're talking about Robert Costa, or whether you're talking about Jen Rubin, or whether you're talking about Dan Dresner or Greg Sargent. I mean, there's a number of people there who have blogs and columns who actually take the same topic and go into it in a lot more detail.
It's just sad.
Other than, it looks good for Republicans. I mean, the default, which got us angry for years and years and years, was that the Republicans out matter the Democrats.
I see.
And so it only really matters what Republican, he would be if he were still doing straight reporting, he would be out in West Virginia talking to the Trump voters in the McDonald's because they're the only people that matter.
I guess so. There's just many reasons why he's terrible. I did see a very good short tweet storm analysis of it. I'll pocket it for later because there's so many other things to get to, but it won't be hard to get back to Chris Solizza being terrible, I'm pretty sure.
So anyway, I just gonna sum up a little bit, and then I got to scoot off to work. It is snowing here, and I have to get to work before the roads get too bad, so I can tackle my new, what we call, some of the docs call it EMR, electronic medical record, or EHR, electronic health record. Yeah. It's the electronic chart. And if there's one thing that doctors hate more than an electronic medical record, it's a new electronic medical record.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, you can't settle on a good acronym for it because ED is taken. I know, and no one really knows that one.
Yeah, that's emergency department, not erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, I know.
ER, that's what everybody calls it because that's what the show is called. But it's a whole department.
I don't even know what
it involves more than just the room.
Okay, right.
You know, you go out and you collect people, and then you bring them back, for example.
There's a whole process. It's not just
those are called
room that it
ambulances.
happens in. Okay.
Yeah. It's all of that.
TV, reality TV says it's ER, but reality says it's ED.
Yes.
It's important.
Anyway, it's, one of my good friends points out that the thing that Cillizza does, which is a value, is he lets us know how dumb people see complex issues.
Oh, okay. That is a service.
And that is a definite service. That's definitely. It's just that he gets it all wrong. But that also is a service because that's typically what happens. If you think of Donald Trump as the guy on the sidelines, Vinny from the Bronx calling into sports radio who suddenly was given the coaching job at the New York Giants, then, Cillizza's that same guy, only they made him a reporter.
Yes, although that is a total Jets move. Let's be serious.
Yes.
Okay, that's not the Giants. All right.
Well, the Jets would make you the quarterback.
That could be.
The Giants would make you the coach.
Yeah. I guess it's possible at this point. Okay. Well, where were we? What else are we doing? You need to go because of the snow. That's a big story
You're on
too.
Your own. So I'm just going to leave you with all
right.
of this, and it's your problem.
It is not snowing here, and so I can do that. But aren't you getting? How much snow are you expecting?
A foot.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
I got an
right?
inch and a half, so I can get in there. But the question is going to be when we close it down and leave.
All right. Well,
that'll be a hour to hour, minute to minute decision.
All right. Well, good luck. Stay safe on the roads. I know that's happening elsewhere. I hear from relatives up in New Jersey. It's going to be like an 18-inch snowstorm for them. Yeah. It's pretty major, and it is not happening here. They were surprised to find out, but I guess it's a nor'easter, and it's just not reaching down here. So
yeah, well,
the kids were disappointed, but that's okay.
If Virginia is spared, I'm very happy. Got a lot of friends in Virginia.
Yes.
Even including you.
Right. Thank you. I'm glad to be included there. And we're trending blue and something, and I don't know. We'll go out and knock on doors. Right. Do up there.
Anyway, with that, this is Greg Dworkin speaking to my good friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning. I'll be back tomorrow. I did miss being there Monday.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll have more to talk about because Donald Trump is that guy from sports radio who happens to be trying to run the country.
Right.
I think the Gary Cohn thing is a big deal. Let me just spend a moment on that, if I might.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Gary Cohn, whose name often appears on Twitter with the globe of the world next to him.
Oh.
He's a globalist.
Oh. Well.
Or he's Jewish. I mean, depending upon which way you want to look at it when that symbol is being used.
Oh.
Gary Cohn remained in the White House after Charlottesville because there are good people on both sides.
Right.
And he didn't see fit to resign over that.
No.
But he did resign over tariffs. Paul Ryan didn't really have a tremendous problem with what happened in Charlottesville, but he did have a problem with tariffs. And if there's a brewing Republican revolt over what Donald Trump is doing, it's got nothing to do with how he treats immigrants, and it's got nothing to do with how he treats American citizens who aren't immigrants. It has everything to do with tariffs, though, because rich people don't like it, and that's who funds the Republican Party. So Russia, all this other stuff, Stormy Daniels, whatever. But tariffs, Paul Ryan is threatening to do something about it in Congress.
No.
What does it mean?
That deserves music.
But we do know that Gary Cohn in the White House thought that this was something that he couldn't stay around for, and so he resigned. He's out.
Yeah.
And as many have pointed out, it's also a process thing. The whole process of how you decide what you're going to do with the economy is supposed to be step-by-step meetings and principles and going through the chain of command and all that sort of stuff. Instead, a couple of advisors got Trump's ear, talked to him, and then boom, there's tariffs.
Yeah, I understand there was an ad on Fox and Friends from the steel industry. Oh, and after which shortly after which he tweeted his intent to do something about it.
So Gary Cohn may or may not have been upset about what happened with Charlottesville. We'll assume he was, because he said so. But he didn't resign over it.
No.
He's resigning over this, not because tariffs are more important than race, as Matt Glassman points out on Twitter, but rather because his ability to do his job has been compromised by the fact that they won't go through the chain of command and the procedure that's used in order to, do this right. So now he resigns. But my point is, why didn't he resign before? People will say, well, it's because, the Charlottesville thing had nothing to do with his job, and this has everything to do with his job, and the competent people have to stay there in order to, and here's where I come in and say, to what end? He stayed because if he left, he'd be replaced by a protectionist. He's going to leave, and now he's going to be replaced by a protectionist.
Yes.
What did he accomplish? If he had resigned then, he would have shown a light on the White House and made Stephen Miller's job that much harder, and there would have been something to it. Yes. Now, there's nothing.
He is not a strategist.
With nothing.
That is true. I did see somebody take a guess at an alternative explanation as to why leave now versus Charlottesville, and one of the speculative answers was there was some sort of bonus that he gets to pocket at a preferable tax rate if he stays in government for a year after having left.
I don't think it matters to him. It may matter to other people.
Maybe.
But he's a pretty wealthy guy who really, and that was also pointed out, it's not easy when your boss wants to do something to just turn around and leave your job. And again, as was pointed out on Twitter, that may be true if you're a single mother, trying to raise kids.
Right.
But this guy could already retire. He's very wealthy. And by the way, he could find employment in a heartbeat if he wants to. That doesn't apply to him.
Yeah, I guess so. People are speculating on all kinds of things. Also, I
just have this thing about Nazis. I hate Nazis.
Oh.
And I think that if
Why?
you're going to draw a line, that's a good line to draw.
It's
if
a pretty
you're going to take
good
a hill
one.
to die on, why don't you do it over Nazis, not over stupid stuff?
That's a good question. I think that The Onion had a headline about him resigning because of the bigoted remarks about steel and aluminum.
That would make sense.
Well, tariffs are taxes, and that's what gets people like Paul Ryan and Gary Cohn riled up.
I suppose. So now the economy's in the hands of Wilbur Ross holding up cans of soup.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not so good, maybe.
Maybe. It's I'm sure interesting and attractive to Ted Cruz, who loves canned soup.
Right. And so this raises, I think, legitimately a bigger argument. We were not argument in terms of like yelling at each other, but just the intellectual back and forth discussion that we were having on Twitter about this. If you are a person of competence, do you stay or do you go?
I don't know about any of them.
Do you better serve the country by sticking around, or do you better serve the country by resigning in principle? I think there were a whole bunch of people that should have resigned over the Charlottesville thing.
Sure.
And I also think that if you take the position that, well, you're serving the country by staying, if you're competent, we want the competent people to stay, we don't want them to leave, then you enable people like John Kelly to do whatever he wants and not pick on him, because what if he leaves? And I think that's bad.
Generally speaking.
So that's where I stand on it.
All right. Well, I won't argue with you here on the radio. How about that?
Right? I hate Nazis, and I don't like John Kelly, and I think that he and Stephen Miller enabled a lot of that crap, and I think they ought to be held accountable for it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Again, I'll leave, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks very much, Greg.
Actually, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I won't see you because this is radio. But
yeah, plus you'll be covered in snow.
Let's not get too S about this.
Okay. Right. Why bother doing that when we know it's not valid anyway?
Exactly.
Or maybe
Take care and have fun with the rest of the show.
You too. Drive safely, bring a shovel, and let us know how it goes. Bill says up in Portland, Maine, I guess they're expecting something like 18 inches of snow there as well. He claims that it is the consistency of mashed potatoes, which seems rather heavy. Is that, I'm trying to think, I guess that's semi-good for snowball fighting, although you'll get tired very quickly. You limit your pitch count, though, and I think you'll be okay. It is still early in preseason. You don't want to risk any injury, no rotator cuff problems. You don't want anything like that to ruin your season. Okay. Let's see. Speaking of, Greg said he was going to stick to his story. There are plenty of stories that you could stick to, one of which is, of course, the Stormy Daniels story. I just wanted to, where is there's no, in this screen grab from Matt Ortega, I was hoping to get the DD pseudonym that Donald Trump was using, and it's something like David, I don't know, what is it? I want to grab on to the, I remember Peggy Peterson, but the DD one, all right, I'll look it up maybe during the break. It's certainly not that important to the overall story. But I did mention that there was a short tweet storm, which I think bore on, well, this was on, speaking of bore, it bore on the Chris Cillizza piece. Soledad O'Brien, far from the only person highly critical of the piece on Twitter. And this one struck me as pretty much on the mark, and I think maybe Dana Hool had sent this one on or retweeted this one. And it is James Poniwozik. How does he say that? We've called his name before in the past, and he's got that wacky name of Poniwozik. Is that right? Poniewozik. Wozik is probably correct. Poniwozik? Poniwozik? Where does he put the emphasis on that? I don't know, because it's Twitter and it's a written medium, but you have likely seen his verified ass roaming the halls of Twitterdom. I don't know why but there we are. Oh, there's a pronunciation guide in the bio. It's Panawazik. There we. Thanks for asking. I did it, and you're welcome. And thank you for hearing me ask you previously when you put that in there. Panawazik. All right. Well, that's enough of that. Here's the explanation, though. As for why he doesn't like the Chris Cillizza analysis, such as it is. And he begins by saying, I don't like joining pile-ons, because that's what's happening here. Not pylons, like the little plastic traffic cones. Pile-ons. That's what's happening on Twitter. Everybody has something terrible to say about Chris Cillizza and or this so-called analysis. And it's hard to avoid offering up criticism when you do that. When you tweet around, here's analysis by Cillizza CNN, as he labels himself on Twitter, you kind of set yourself up. But anyway, I don't like joining pile-ons, James says. But TV, remember that this is the headline of the Cillizza piece. Donald Trump is producing the greatest reality show ever. Here's the problem. TV is singularly important to understanding Trump. Although it says Trumps, like possessive Trumps. Trumps what? Trumps anything. And he says, I'm biased, obviously, about both Trump and TV, because he is, of course, the New York Times TV critic. And that's not the problem with this analysis. And this also makes him uniquely suited to offer this analysis, I think. This analysis of the analysis. The problem is it's glib and it understands Trump's relationship with respect to reality TV exactly backwards. Recall that Soledad O'Brien also said it misunderstands the nature of reality TV. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually having to type that. Because, you'd think off the bat, without giving it any further thought, what's to understand about reality TV? You take a camera and you film reality and then you put it on television. And of course, that's not really what is happening in reality TV. It's a bad name for it. A misnomer, really, reality TV. And I think we've actually discussed that on the show in the past, probably in the context of The Apprentice and things like it. And we get in this tweet storm towards the heart of that. And I had to add comments to it. I'll tell you what they were after I get through the tweet storm. It's only 3 tweets. The difference between The Apprentice and the chaos that this piece, Cillizza's piece, describes is Mark Burnett, of course, the producer of The Apprentice, had a whole structure to retroactively impose coherence on Trump. And here I was forced to comment, you remember from this show when we read the story of the editors who worked on the original Apprentice show, and in fact the original Apprentice pilot episode, where they were not sure what it was that they were producing, and they came back with a first cut that offered up The Apprentice as a comedy, a send-up of business, starring this buffoonish parody of the American businessman, Donald Trump. And everybody would appreciate the ironic humor of using this washed up, self-promoting idiot who thinks he's a great businessman as the model for everyone in America, all the dumb bosses of America who think they know what they're doing and really don't. But it was eventually rejected, and Mark Burnett went back and said, no, we're really trying to sell Donald Trump as a successful, competent businessman, and you need to go back to the drawing room and re-edit this episode and all future episodes with that in mind. You need to do what you have to do as editors to impose structure. I mean, that's the best way of putting it in succinctly, I guess. The difference between The Apprentice and the chaos that the piece describes is that Mark Burnett had a whole structure to retroactively impose coherence on Trump. We saw that manifest itself in the article about what the editors had to do, in that they had to, switch the chronology of pieces of film that they had, or go back to pieces that were filmed informally or whatever. And they had to reconstruct or build a story narrative around what they had. In other words, the decisions that Donald Trump made on tape about firing certain contestants or keeping others on or whatever it is, they were so incoherent and stupid and without basis that they had to go back and try and manipulate film that they had from elsewhere to build a narrative that even came close to making sense of the decision that he made in the boardroom. So that's part of what we're talking about when we say Mark Burnett had a whole structure to retroactively impose coherence on Trump. Now, what you're seeing here is Trump indulging his impulses, which made him a fit at the start for reality TV, but without that controlling hand of the editing that is behind the scenes. To say that Trump is cannily, quote, staging a reality show by indulging his impulses unchecked misunderstands his nature, the White House, and reality TV. It's the equivalent of watching a movie and assuming that the actors make up their lines as they speak them. That is, I think, a pretty cogent analysis of what's actually going on here, and it is a good reminder of something we need to keep in mind. Not only that reality TV doesn't work this way, but that Donald Trump isn't a genius businessman. He's not a competent person in any context, but with enough editing and the willingness to simply overwhelm the airwaves with advertising that say he is a competent businessman, you come to that picture. It's no way to run anything. You can't run the White House that way, even if you actually are a competent business person. And it's very difficult to comprehend how you could be running things competently and not be consulting left hand with right and coordinating your policies and following procedures so that things hold up. But I don't know. I guess we're now supposed to be used to that somehow. Let's see. All right. So what other interesting things might we sample before our next upcoming break? Well, let's see. Michael Cohen is in a lot of news today, including, I guess, the Stormy Daniels story. He was, of course, supposed to be the fixer lawyer who made that whole thing work, and apparently it did not, and that seems like bad news for Donald Trump. Josh Marshall, also observing here, the best part of the Trump-Stormy hush agreement, as they call it, is the part where Trump holds out the right to produce future derivative works and adaptations of the, well, it says here, dick pics and text messages. That's something I had, I think, missed, despite the fact that we were reading that, the agreement hints that something like that exists. I didn't pick up on the idea of not only does it hint that they exist, but that Trump reserves the right. I want the profits essentially then from any sex tape that might have been made and then makes it to the internet, or I don't know. Does this mean he can sue for royalties if nude text pictures of him get out and people make memes of them? Is that what's going on here? This is Josh Marshall's read of it, and I guess we'll cram some of this in before taking our 1-minute break at the top of the hour. Earlier this evening, that would be last night, I told you about startling new revelations appearing to tie together the Russia probe with various of Donald Trump's and Jared Kushner's shenanigans in the Persian Gulf region. I didn't realize he would start here. It's stunning stuff, but it's complicated stuff. So check out the earlier posts and the underlying articles from the Times and CNN to get the details. But no sooner did that happen than an attorney for Stormy Daniels posted a legal filing in which she asks a court to declare the hush agreement between her and Donald Trump and his lawyer, Michael Cohen, to be null and void. But this rather sterile description doesn't do justice to what is contained in the filing, which includes the original hush agreement itself and other related documents. Suffice it to say, it focuses not so much on Stormy Daniels saying mum about a sexual relationship with Trump, but on certain still images and or text messages which were authored by and or relate to Donald Trump. Let's put this baldly, he says, because Trump. Stormy appears to be saying that she's got or had sexts and maybe even dick pics from President Trump. So with that, let's go to the horrid details. I have read the entire legal filing. I am not a lawyer, but I think I can provide a basic description of what's contained in it. I will note or leave for others the legal points which are beyond my knowledge and experience. I guess we should read this thing. For some backstory here, according to the filing, after the Access Hollywood tape surfaced, Daniels tried to sell or publicize the story of her affair with Donald Trump. I don't think we had realized that, but it was a pretty easy guess, I think, had we bothered to make it. Let's see. And apparently pictures and text messages or whatever else is described in the filing. Trump and Michael Cohen found out about it and made this deal to buy her silence and regain possession of the intellectual property rights to the pictures and or text messages. That is pretty startling all by itself. I'm not going to be able to fit the rest of this story in before the break, but I'll see if anything sufficiently salacious presents itself to bring you on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I think we might kind of have to stay with Stormy Daniels for a little while. This is a long-ish piece, although we could do the rest of the show, I guess, about Michael Cohen. And we have that flexibility today, unfortunately. As it turns out, as much as I depend on her for relieving the stress of doing the second hour of the show, after 2 days of solo shows, Joan's not going to be able to join us today. So, well, you know, you get a pass every once in a while. These things happen, and I hope everything is okay. You know, she's feeling a little under the weather is all. And I don't think that's a terrible HIPAA violation, but that comes up from time to time. Anyway, we can certainly manage without if we are forced to do, and we are today. So, you know, our what thoughts and prayers, Joan. She hasn't been shot. That's not it. But all right. Well, speedy recovery for several reasons, not the least of which is you deserve better, and it sucks to be under the weather. Okay. Anyway, moving on here, or rather moving backward, I guess here. We left off in reading Josh Marshall's analysis of Stormy Daniels. And if you're going to read an analysis of Stormy Daniels' story, you might as well start there. You're going to find your way to some fun details, I think, and overthinking the whole thing is always, I think, the way to go. Let's see. He has read the entire legal filing. I don't think we need to do that. By the way, programming note along the way, the Warlock tells us DD stands for David Dennison, and that is the actual truth about what DD stands for, as opposed to the vicious lie forwarded to us by Michael Musson that says DD has to be Dotard Don, and clearly it doesn't have to be, because it's actually David Dennison. It's not Dunkin' Donuts, it's not Double D bra cup size, nothing like that. Please, everyone, keep those prurient thoughts to yourselves. David Dennison also cited herein in the TPM piece, but the Warlock beat Josh to the punch with that one. So where were we? There were the horrid details. The legal filing having been read by Josh, he offers up some backstory. That is to say, Trump and Michael Cohen find out prior to the election, after the release of the Access Hollywood tape, that Daniels had given some thought to trying to sell or publicize her story, including the texts and or pictures, and that they are trying to retain the intellectual property rights. Imagine that's the term of art. That's the body of law that would cover it. But I mean, it does really stretch credulity to say that Donald Trump, like using his idiot phone, because it can't be a smartphone, right, to take pictures of his own junk. Are you serious? Intellectual is the kind of property you're going to use to describe that? I get it. It's a photograph. Could be a misnomer for photographs to be included under intellectual property. But normally, in artistic photographs, the process, the lighting, the composition of the photo, it's all, it's possible to understand that as intellectual property. Dotard J. Trump taking pictures of his own junk to send to a porn star really, really stretches the boundaries of intellectual property, I think. But that's a subject it's a subject for this day, but I'm going to set it aside anyway. According to Daniels, Josh writes, on February 27th of this year, Michael Cohen started an arbitration process in Los Angeles to try to stop Stormy Daniels from talking about her relationship with Donald Trump, which she says clearly in this filing was an intimate relationship during 2006 and 2007. The Hush Agreement, which is dated October 28th, 2016, is included in the filing, and it makes clear that disputes will be handled through confidential arbitration. So Cohen seemed to be seeking redress in that way as set forth in the agreement. Now, he says, first, some side color, but we started with that already. First, some backstory. You can't then say first, some side color. You have to say second, some side color. But that's an issue for the editors, not for me. Donald Trump is referred to in the agreement by the pseudonym David Dennison. DD could easily have been Dirk Diggler, but I guess he thought that was too obvious, although, he would, I'm sure, love to have gone with the braggadocio on that one. Stormy Daniels is Peggy Peterson. Why? I don't know. And yes, she's referred to in the agreement by the initials PP, because of course she is. See, I told you everybody was on that. Daniels also claims that Cohen made her sign a false denial of the affair in January of this year through intimidation and coercive tactics. Now, initially, I thought that she denied having anything to do with that document. But now I guess she's claiming that she did in fact sign it and that she was intimidated and coerced into signing it, which is problematic for Cohen as a matter of bar ethics, perhaps, if she can establish that story. But we'll get to that probably in about 6 months. Clearly, Cohen has been very active on the Stormy beat for the last 2 months. Now, he says, back to our story. Daniels says that the agreement is null and void and asks the court to find as such. She makes 2 legal arguments and what I would call 1 extra legal argument. The first argument is that Donald Trump himself never signed the agreement willfully, not through inattention. So it's not like when he wanders off from bill signings necessarily. However, I do think that that needs to be kept in mind, and his interest in purposefully keeping his signature off of this plays into the whole thing. But it brings me back to my insistence that Congress not take for granted when written communications supposedly from the President of the United States arrive with what is supposed to be his signature on them. I wouldn't take it at face value anyway. Plus, it's also a fine delaying tactic, and I have thought for a long time people should regard anything supposedly signed by the President as suspicious, and you might as well force him to come and sign in front of witnesses every time. Why not impose the inconvenience if you can? Anyway, now it goes on to say, I suspect that this is not a terribly strong argument since news reports at least suggest that Daniels accepted the payment of $130,000, and that does present certain problems. My sense is that in most cases, if you sign an agreement and accept the consideration, i.e. the money, that's an agreement whether or not the other person signs. And remember, Cohen signed on Trump's behalf, so this argument doesn't sound terribly strong. And it doesn't. on its face, but the point is it's enough to get you to court, and that's all she really wants here. Her further argument is that since Cohen publicly discussed the agreement, that voided the agreement. The agreement does make clear repeatedly that no one can discuss the existence of the agreement. Daniels says, in essence, that she doesn't have to go to arbitration, notwithstanding the agreement stipulation to go to arbitration, because there's actually no agreement. That works, and it works a lot better. I have no expertise to judge whether these are strong legal claims. The extra legal argument is, I think, the key one. That is, Daniels is saying out loud for everyone to hear, not only did I have sex with President Trump, who wasn't president yet, but I had compromising text messages and certain still images that Trump went to Herculean lengths. I don't know if that's really the case, but he went to some lengths to keep secret. To use the vernacular, she's pretty clearly suggesting she had dick pics from Trump or something very much like it. The legal filing is here, but I've marked up the key pages. Here are the references to what needs to be handed over to Trump and remain secret forever. And here it is, embedded in his piece: the confidential settlement agreement and mutual release, assignment of copyright and non-disparagement agreement. And it follows Section 1, the parties. And he's really labeled things clearly here in an interesting fashion. 1.0, the parties. 1.1, this settlement agreement and mutual release hereinafter this agreement is made and deemed effective as of the blank, filled in here, 28 day of October 2016, by and between EC LLC. That's the LLC that they set up. EC, we don't even know what that stands for. It's probably out there somewhere, or may even have read it on the air. I don't remember. Doesn't matter that much. EC LLC and or David Dennison, DD, on the one part, and Peggy Peterson, PP, on the other part. EC LLC, DD, and PP are pseudonyms, it says it right in here, whose true identity will be acknowledged in a side letter agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A. This agreement is entered into with reference to the facts and circumstances contained in the following recitals. Now, by the way, I guess the fact that they are using pseudonyms and have boilerplate language at the ready for assigning real-life true identities to those pseudonyms is telling. One, I guess that's part of the Herculean effort. I don't know that it's particularly Herculean, but it is an effort, an extra effort to be sure. And two, like I said, that they have this solution at the ready is very telling. There was not long ago a report that this was sort of standard operating procedure of sorts for Donald Trump and or Michael Cohen, and that this didn't present a particularly unique problem by 2016 in covering up this inappropriate relationship with, in this case, a porn star, and who knows how many other inappropriate relationships there were, and whether they were with porn stars, porn bit players, or people who had nothing whatsoever to do with porn. We don't know. But they had a standard operating procedure, which most people don't have, for covering up illicit affairs. And this was it. Boilerplate language. They were going to assign, you might, if you had this problem, you would, and you were looking to get a NDA signed, it probably wouldn't even occur to you to do that. But the fact that he knew what to do, and the fact that he was able to think to go to using an NDA and how will we do it without putting my name on it? Oh, don't worry about it. We have the codicil here. We'll use pseudonyms and attach as Exhibit A side letter agreement. We know all about it. It's all in the bag. We've done it before. 2.0 here, recitals. Prior to entering into this agreement, 2.1 here, PP came into possession of certain confidential information, in scare quotes, pertaining to DD, as more fully defined below, only some of which is in tangible form, which includes, but is not limited to, information, Greg read this to you, certain still images and or text messages which were authored by or relate to DD, collectively the property, each as more fully defined below, but which all are included and attached hereto as Exhibit 1 to the side letter agreement. They really have the nomenclature all laid out here, ready to go. 2.2 here. has a section A to it. PP claims that she has been damaged by DD's alleged actions against her, including but not limited to tort claims proximately causing injury to her person and other related claims. DD also denies such claims. Hereinafter, PP claims. Section B, DD claims that he has been damaged by PP's alleged actions against him, including but not limited to the alleged threatened selling, transferring, licensing, publicly disseminating, and or exploiting the images and or property and or other confidential information relating to DD, all without the knowledge, consent, or authorization of DD. PP denies all such claims. Hereinafter, DD claims. Ready for Section C? The PP claims, and the DD claims are hereinafter collectively referred to as the released claims. They really do have a whole process for this, don't they? 2.3, DD desires to acquire and PP desires to sell, transfer and or turn over to DD any and all tangible copies of the property and any and all physical and intellectual property rights in and to all of the property. As a condition of DD releasing any claims against PP relating to this matter, PP agrees to sell and transfer to DD all and each of her rights in and to such property. PP agrees to deliver each and every existing copy of all tangible property to DD and permanently delete any electronic copies, no way, that can not be transferred, and agrees that she shall not possess, nor directly or indirectly disclose, convey, transfer, or assign property or any confidential information to any third party as more fully provided herein. Section 2.4, it is the intention of the parties that confidential information as defined herein shall remain confidential as expressly provided herein below. I love that word. The parties expressly acknowledge, agree, and understand that the confidentiality provisions herein and it cuts off there. As page 0, by the way, page 1 is not included in this scan for some reason, so I can't tell you what else is going on here. And it is, the bottom of the page is initialed, and they have two initial lines on the bottom of the page, one for PP and one for DD. For PP, it is initialed S, and I can't tell whether it's D, like Stormy Daniels, or whether it's S for, or whether it's under her real name, which escapes me at the moment, but isn't that far removed initial-wise from SD. And, it's in script, so I can't tell whether she used her real name or not. Unless one of you reminds me real quick of what her real name is, I won't be able to tell. But the line for DD simply says EC. That's not a person's signature. That's EC LLC. So when Michael Cohen signs, he signs with the initials of a non-natural person, which is kind of weird, but I guess probably happens in business contracts all the time, but I'm not really sure about that. But anyway, I don't think that'll affect the validity of this agreement necessarily. We skip then to page 2 here. And by the way, did everybody figure out, was everybody able to follow the legalese? I'm not even certain whether that made as much sense to everyone else as it did to me. But what is essentially happening here, what's outlined in this section, is Trump has threatened at some point to sue or otherwise harass or make trouble for Stormy Daniels if she goes ahead with threatening to sell or otherwise disseminate the pictures and or texts that she may have existing from their relationship, and that the only way she can get out from underneath Trump's threats is to hand over any physical copies of anything she may have and delete from her phones or computers or electronic devices any electronic copies she may have, and agrees never ever to try to sell or publicize or otherwise pass these things on, in exchange for which Trump would agree to drop his claims that she had damaged him in tort and was going to be the subject of a lawsuit. The next page that is included here is page 2. We went from page 0 to page 2, and section 3.0, the settlement terms. 3.0.1.1, EC LLC shall pay to PP $130,000 US dollars as follows. $130,000 shall be wired into PP's attorney-client trust account. On or before, look at this, the way they set the deadline here. 1600 hours PST on 10/27/16, hereinafter gross settlement amount. PP's attorney's wiring instructions are, and they give the whole rigmarole here, and I don't know that we need to do it, but it's a bank in Beverly Hills, California, on Wilshire Boulevard. So super fancy and all of that. Interesting, I guess, to note here, the terms are that by 1600 hours, that would be 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on October 27th, she's supposed to get paid. Note that page 0 says, though, that the agreement is deemed effective as of the 28th of October, 2016. So that $130,000 by the terms of this agreement was already supposed to be in her bank account, and apparently that was some serious problem with that. We heard earlier in this so-called controversy that she was having some significant difficulty getting paid in all of this. Anyway, let's see. Other things here. Keith M. Davidson, Esquire, shall receive the gross settlement amount in trust. No portion of the gross settlement amount shall be dispersed by attorney for PP unless and until PP executes all required settlement documents. Undertakings and obligations by PP. Oh, I guess there's a possibility there that the wire transfer had been made by 1600 hours PST on 10/27, but that the attorney had not released it to Stormy Daniels because he, or perhaps Michael Cohen, believed that she had not yet complied with all of the terms, and that would be different. She would not be getting paid just the same, but the cause, it is unclear. The cause could have been Michael Cohen's failure to make the wire transfer, or the cause could have been Keith Davidson having been instructed by Michael Cohen or making the decision unilaterally not to pay her because the terms of the agreement had not yet been met. I don't know. Let's see. Obligations and undertakings by PP. PP will do each of the following by 11/01/16. Execute this agreement and return a signed copy to DD. PP shall transfer and or assign any and all rights in and to the property to DD as set forth herein below, and execute an assignment and transfer of copyright in the form attached hereto, and return a signed copy of the same to DD's counsel. PP, that would be, once again, Stormy Daniels, PP shall deliver to DD, Trump, every existing copy of all tangible property. PP shall completely divest herself. Completely divest. That sounds ominous. Of any and all artistic media impressions, paintings, video, images, still images, email messages, text messages, Instagram messages, Facebook posting, or any other type of creation by DD. PP shall transfer all physical ownership and intellectual property rights to DD. So again, here is, I have to give you all my pictures, I have to erase all my electronic devices, and I have to agree that the owner of all rights to publish, distribute, sell, or otherwise disseminate any such records belong to Trump. And if I try to sell them now, one, I will have broken the agreement by retaining a copy, and two, I will have broken the agreement by violating the intellectual property rights I've transferred to Donald Trump by this agreement. So in other words, if she were to publish such a picture, he could sue her for violation of copyright in addition to a number of other things. So that's the upshot of that section there. PP shall deliver to DD any and all non-privileged correspondence concerning or related to DD between PP and any third party. So she's supposed to turn over all evidence that she may have, any written evidence or other correspondence that she has either with Trump or any other person or entity that would tend to establish the existence of this relationship. He wanted her to erase all the evidence, not only of the pictures, but that they had any relationship whatsoever. PP shall not at any time from the date of this agreement forward directly or indirectly disclose or disseminate any of the property or any confidential information, including confirmation of the fact that it exists or ever existed, and or confirming any rumors as to any such existence to any third party as more fully provided herein. Once again, a big trap for her, but as it turns out, she's quite right, and it's interesting. It is very one-sided, and here you may have a contracts problem. We'll say a contracts exam anyway would not, if not necessarily the reality of contracts interpretation in courts. The contracts exam would say this is a very one-sided list of consideration here. The deal is that Trump provides $130,000, but she provides all sorts of subjects herself to all sorts of liability and gives up all kinds of rights, including the right to acknowledge that this relationship happened or that any of this legalizing is happening on the side. She can't even acknowledge that any of it is true. And the same really ought to be true for Donald Trump and the other party in this. And it's not, although it's not absolutely necessary in order to make it a binding contract. But there's some question about whether or not the terms are so disproportionate and unequal that as to be maybe even unconscionable, that Trump retaining the right for himself to discuss the existence of these documents, but deny her the right, a party to the same documents, the right to acknowledge the existence of the documents could be troublesome, but it's not unheard of. PP shall provide to DD to the extent not already done so and set forth in paragraph 4.2 herein below, summary details disclosing to whom PP or anyone else on PP's behalf disclosed, displayed to, disseminated, transferred to, provided a copy to, and or, and it's cut off here, and page 3 is missing. Every other page of this is missing. It's very interesting. What this, though, is setting up is she was supposed to provide, in order to get the money, a list, basically, of disclosing anybody to whom she might have mentioned the existence of the affair or any of the pictures or text messages or any of the legal documents surrounding the controversy. That, too, had to be provided so that Trump would know who to track down and intimidate separately in order to continue to keep the story quiet. I don't know that we really need to go through all the rest of this here. We jump to page 4 next, and let's see what did Josh highlight here. Delivery of the property to DD includes a highlighted section here. The property delivered under this paragraph shall become Exhibit 1 to the side letter agreement, and text messages between PP and DD also mentioned explicitly here. Says here, oh, look at this, confidentiality and representations and warranties, section 4.0. In 4.1a, all intangible information pertaining to DD and or his family, including but not limited to his children or any alleged children or any of his alleged sexual partners, alleged sexual actions or alleged sexual conduct or related matters, and or friends learned, obtained, or acquired by PP, including without limitation information contained in letters. This is getting confusing. Emails, text messages, agreements, documents, audio, and yada, yada. I guess what's important here is the mention of alleged children or any of his alleged sexual partners, alleged sexual actions, or alleged sexual conduct. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're acknowledging that there are such. They're simply precluding Stormy Daniels from talking about anything she may have learned along the way about his other sex partners and whether or not he may or may not have fathered children with them, which seems a little bit alarming in its own right. And another break about to come up here. Let's see if we can finish up with the documents. Josh writes here, the agreement refers to these things that Daniels has to turn over as the property And at one point, Trump, oddly enough, seems to be holding out for himself the opportunity to create derivative works based on his still images and text with Stormy. But whatever. Maybe it's just boilerplate language. And gosh, I hope so, because otherwise the implication is that he intends to put out a sex tape, I guess. Or at least he wants all the money from that. What else here? There's a few other weird references in here, and then I guess here the highlighted part from page 3, which now does make an appearance in this post, is that language about derivative works. We really ought to be done with this by now, and perhaps we'll force ourselves to be after this break. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I guess we now have to question how we've spent our lives to this point. We can't be spending this much time on this, but yet questions linger. Thanks to everybody, including the Warlock and a guy named Josh, who allegedly is actually named Josh, who tweets, though, as Two Ravens Brew, all one word, two Ravens, one word. Keep that in mind. That Stormy Daniels' real name is Stephanie Clifford, an SC, not SD. And I'm taking a look at these. I can't tell. Oh, you know what? This is interesting. On page 9, well, first of all, there's a page 9 that we haven't looked at here, that Josh highlights and then puts a exclamation point, which, let's see, what he's highlighting here. In the event an arbitrator determines that there's been a breach of the, LD breach terms of this agreement by PP individually or the PP group, there's a PP group, PP shall also be obligated to pay and agree to pay DD the sum of $1 million as a reasonable and fair amount of liquidated damages to compensate DD for any loss or damage. We'll see whether that would ever stand up. LD breach terms. As liquidated damages. There we are. Okay. Well, anyway, he might as well just ask for it. I don't know whether that works, and I don't know whether that's even in play or not, but also very interesting. So, yeah, lots of interesting stuff packed into this. Trump loves to pretend he's suing people for $1 million. But as I was saying, here on page 3, which appears down at the bottom, and page 9, PP, it looks like, is actually signed as PP on page 9. On page 3, it's less clear what she's writing. She may have switched over to PP, but that doesn't look at all like what she put on page 2, which does look a lot more like SC, which would be Stephanie Clifford. And on page 0 here, there's an S and like maybe a really skinny D, Stormy Daniels. It could be, I mean, it's arguably PP, but it's a very weird PP, to be honest. And how many times? Gosh, imagine the audio clips you can get from this. So what a weird PP. Anyway, I mean, it really looks like S. It's closer to D than SC, but it could be PP with some kind of crazy scribble-scrabble at the bottom. It's much more clearly an SC on page 2. And I think maybe like by page 4, Michael Cohen or somebody, maybe her lawyer, is now seems to be advising her, you just put PP there. You don't have to put SD or S anything. And then by page 9, it's very much more clearly a PP initialing on the thing. So I don't know if she was clearly not familiar with the procedure that was being used, but I guess Trump and or Michael Cohen and or her own lawyer was more familiar with it. Other questions being asked. I feel like we gotta, now that we've taken a dive into it, people have questions. They want things straightened out. Let's see. The Warlock also asks, is it a legal agreement if pseudonyms are used? And I don't know. I don't do enough of these kinds of deals or any of these deals to know for sure, but I can tell you that I think the inclusion, ouch, I just got a terrible shock by tossing a sweatshirt aside, and I hope that hasn't disconnected us from the internet in some weird way. But I think the incorporation by reference in the body of the agreement to a very important side letter agreement that explicitly states will identify the true identity of the parties to the agreement should be enough to save it, that the agreement can be written with pseudonyms and referring only to pseudonyms. And I guess that's an attempt to, you wouldn't be able to find out who PP and SD actually are by getting a hold of the agreement alone. You would have to have the side letter agreement noting who the identities that correspond to the pseudonyms are. But it's clear, from the terms of the agreement that it's a necessary part of the agreement. And so I think that saves it in terms of using pseudonyms, although it's still a highly questionable practice, I would think. And although, I don't know why they wouldn't bother to let them get away with it. I don't know if any court would rule against the validity because of it being used when you consider how many perfectly valid contracts are executed by non-natural entities, corporations, and of course LLCs, some of which, the real ownership of which can be hidden behind layers of legalisms. Matthew Rigdon noting for us that, yes, whenever you take a photograph now, you're automatically granted copyright. Thanks Disney. He thanks Disney for that one. I think the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which they doubtless backed, is what gives us some of that. And sometimes it can be a good thing. Very true. Whenever you take a photograph now, you're automatically granted copyright in it. Of course, so if Trump took his own selfie of whatever, of anything, but including his own junk, I guess, he would have copyright in it. Of course, texting it, though, is questionable. Texting it to Stormy Daniels doesn't change his copyright interest in the original photo, but then some question about whether or not Stormy and here's why he reaches for derivative works, depending on what she did with the photo. If she memed it and put, one does not simply walk into Mordor on the dick pic, that's a derivative work. Although you could then go to court and over the intellectual property and say it's not clearly derivative enough, doesn't create the nature of a new work here. But that's a different question. Matthew notes also what's scarier is that Trump can now say that grabbing pussy is use of eminent domain. That would be a novel legal theory. But then there's so much novel about Trump and all of his theories, including the ability to get on the radio and say grabbing pussy and get away with it because the president said it. All right. We do need to move on from this. There's so much else happening here, including the possible mainstreaming of the story I mentioned yesterday about the Belarusian sex coach / escort now being sort of mainstreamed as part of the Oleg Deripaska story and the Trump-Russia story in ways I hadn't anticipated happening so quickly. So we might be able to get back to that story. Perhaps more interesting to the rest of you, the fact that referring to as this woman as a Belarusian sex coach caused me to walk around town yesterday doing the conga on the sidewalk and singing to myself, Belarusian sex coach, Belarusian sex coach. And that, I thank our lucky stars every day for the Donald Trump administration for making these things possible. And ordinarily, that would just be craziness, but now it's like being a news junkie. I get to say, no, I pay attention to serious stuff. This was in the news. Anyway, other stories about Michael Cohen are plentiful. On the serious side of things, I had set aside, there were two other threads of craziness, otherwise known as real news, that involved Michael Cohen yesterday. Let's see. There are, and they are distinct. The Washington Post version of things focused on this side. Let's bring it up and read the headline and give you some idea of what we're talking about. Special counsel has examined, that would be Mueller this time, not the Office of Special Counsel, but the actual, and there is some difference there, right? The special Office of Special Counsel that drew conclusions about Kellyanne Conway's violations of the Hatch Act is different, yes, from Mueller's position as special counsel. There are several, I guess. Special counsel has examined episodes involving Michael Cohen, Trump's longtime lawyer. What do we mean by this? Rosalind Helderman, Tom Hamburger, Josh Dawsey on the byline for the Washington Post. Special counsel Robert S. Mueller III has requested documents and interviewed witnesses about incidents involving Michael Cohen, the longtime lawyer for President Trump, whose wide-ranging portfolio, to say the least, has given him a unique vantage point into Trump's business, campaign, and political activities. It's not Stormy Daniels that they're looking at, though that could change today. The article states it this way: there is no indication that Cohen is a subject or a target of the investigation into Russian interference in the election, but the scrutiny of his interactions is another sign of the far-reaching nature of the special counsel probe, which is examining members of the president's inner circle and aspects of Trump's past business outreach to Russia. As one of Trump's closest advisors, Cohen played a role in at least two episodes involving Russian interests that have drawn Mueller's attention, according to several people familiar with this stuff. One area of focus has been negotiations Cohen undertook during the campaign to help the Trump organization build a tower in Moscow. You remember that? That would have been with the Agalarovs, who were, of course, involved in arranging the Trump Tower meeting in June of 2016, not about adoptions, but about sanctions, at which Don Jr. said, if you have email dirt on Hillary, I love it, right? Cohen brought Trump a letter of intent in 2015, October 2015, from a Russian developer, Agalarov. Why they don't say it and tell us who that is, I don't know, but you're supposed to know that as background. If you don't, I will tell you. That's the purpose of this show. To build a Moscow project. Later, he sent an email to Russian President Vladimir Putin's chief spokesman seeking help to advance the stalled project. He said he did not recall receiving a response. Another area that Mueller's team has explored is a Russia-friendly peace proposal for Ukraine. Remember this one? That was delivered to Cohen by a Ukrainian lawmaker 1 week after Trump took office. Cohen is among 9 Trump associates whose communications with former Trump aide Sam Nunberg, who melted down day before yesterday, are being sought by the special counsel, according to a grand jury subpoena sent to Nunberg last week. Cohen is the only individual on the list who never worked for the Trump campaign or the White House, and the only one still working for the president. Stephen Ryan, an attorney for Cohen, rejected the notion that his client was under particular scrutiny by Mueller. He does so in a statement following, but I'm going to skip over it. Known for his combative style and fierce loyalty to Trump, Cohen served for a decade as top lawyer for the Trump Organization, tangling with reporters and Trump's business competitors on behalf of the celebrity real estate mogul. He never formally joined the campaign, but was in close contact with his longtime boss from his Trump Tower office throughout the race and presidential transition. Cohen's aggressive tactics recently came into public view when he acknowledged the facilitating the Stormy Daniels agreement. But that's not even what Mueller is looking at. it comes down to the two things. One, dealing with the Agalarovs and the Putin government about trying to build a Moscow Trump Tower, and hand delivering the weird peace proposal that was strangely pro-Russia with regard to the Ukraine and the annexation of the Crimea. Remember all of that? Let's see. Cohen figured in two key episodes related to the former Soviet Union during and immediately following the campaign, including discussion about the never-realized Trump Tower Moscow. Cohen has said he worked on the deal with, remember, Felix Sater, because that's who he worked with, the real estate developer who helped build a number of Trump-branded properties, including Trump Soho in New York, and had tried to help Trump build in Moscow a decade earlier. The most recent effort to launch a Trump-branded development in Moscow began in the fall of 2015. At the same time, Trump was competing for the presidential nomination, Republican nomination. In January of 2016, Cohen emailed Dmitry Peskov, Putin's spokesman, to ask for help in advancing the project. Cohen said in an August statement he didn't recall getting any response on that. He said the plan was abandoned in January of 2016 for business reasons, when government permission was not secured and that the matter was not related in any way to Mr. Trump's presidential campaign. Yeah, right. Mueller has requested documents related to the project, and his prosecutors have asked witnesses about it, according to people familiar with the probe. Sater and Cohen also figure in the Ukrainian peace proposal, both of them on both of those things. Then, another episode that's been reviewed by the special counsel investigators. Robert Wolf, attorney for Sater, said he was not aware of any recent interviews by the special counsel regarding the episodes involving Sater. Skipping a little further down, there was this. Sater organized a January 27th, 2017 meeting at the Loews Regency Hotel in New York, during which Ukrainian lawmaker Andriy Artemenko gave Cohen the proposal, according to interviews last year with the three participants. That back channel proposal offered a pathway for resolving Ukrainian dispute that could have led to the lifting of U.S. sanctions on Russia. Gee whiz, they're trying to get at these sanctions every which way, and these guys are intimately involved in every single approach to it. So that was one of the two reasons that Cohen was in the news before the Stormy Daniels story. This next one, covered by the Daily Beast, is equally, if not more, concerning. Trump lawyer Michael Cohen received inside info from Russia probe. Closed-door testimony before the House Russia probe, remember, is supposed to stay behind closed doors. But as we know, they've already leaked things like Mark Warner's texts. The House Intel Committee leaking like a sieve, supposed to be the most secure of House committees, but it isn't. And somehow, this closed-door testimony got into the hands of another witness and a key Trump confidant instead. Betsy Woodruff and Spencer Ackerman reporting this one. On December 19th, 2017, a former staffer for John McCain named David Kramer testified before the House Intelligence Committee behind closed doors. Did we even note that? I don't think so. He'd played a role in bringing the salacious and unverified Steele dossier to the FBI's attention, and members peppered him with questions about it. Then something unusual happened. Word of Kramer's testimony got out to the lawyer of another witness. The following, based on conversations with multiple sources familiar with the matter, illuminates the extraordinary breakdown of trust between committee investigators and the witnesses they call. It also suggests that some people working on the committee investigation may be trying to covertly assist one of the president's closest allies when the president's inner circle is ostensibly the focus of their probe, or a focus anyway. A few days after Kramer's testimony, his lawyer, Larry Robbins, got a strange call. The call was from Stephen Ryan, a lawyer who represents Trump's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen. Cohen is facing scrutiny from special counsel Mueller and congressional investigators regarding potential coordination between Trump's team and the Kremlin. He featured prominently in the Steele dossier as well, the document that Kramer handled, and is suing BuzzFeed for publishing it. Ryan told Robbins he reached out because someone from the House told him that Robbins' client, Kramer, had information about the Steele dossier that could help Cohen. Robbins declined to help. Ryan then asked Robbins not to tell the House Intel Committee about their conversation. Let me see if I have all of the details of this correct. Kramer is the guy who worked for McCain. Kramer's testimony got out, right? Let me see here. I'm going to follow all of this. Kramer's lawyer is Larry Robbins. Kramer's lawyer, that is to say, McCain's staffer's lawyer, Larry Robbins, gets a call from Stephen Ryan, who is Michael Cohen's lawyer. Okay. We know why Cohen is under investigation. Ryan, Cohen's lawyer, told Robbins, who is the McCain staffer's lawyer, that he reached out because someone from the House told him that Kramer, the McCain staffer, had information about the Steele dossier that could help Cohen. Kramer's lawyer, Robbins, declines to help. Cohen's lawyer, Ryan, then asks Kramer's lawyer, Robbins, not to tell the House Intel Committee about their conversation. Okay, better. Robbins, who is, again, Kramer's lawyer, right, told the committee anyway. CNN reported in February that Robbins wrote a letter to the committee complaining about leaks to another client's lawyer. The Daily Beast can now confirm that this letter was regarding Stephen Ryan and Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is both the president's longtime personal attorney and one of his most unflagging loyal admirers. He has a history of using every trick in the book, and some of them not in the book, from intimidation to hush money, to keep negative stories about Trump from coming to light, as the New York Times detailed last month. Cohen personally paid porn star Stormy Daniels the $130K in exchange for her commitment not to discuss the affair, etc., and more that we just learned about. According to the Wall Street Journal, the future president did not reimburse Cohen for his efforts. And by the way, great lawyering there. We also, I saw a tweet the other day that Cohen was apparently very verbose with his friends about not getting reimbursed for that thing, and that he had tried and failed and was having tremendous trouble with it. So how do you like that? You blabby lawyer. Yeah, I tried to secure a confidentiality agreement for a prominent client of mine, and I have only one client. You know who he is. Because he slept with a porn star. You might have heard about that. And boy, is it trouble for me to get reimbursed for all that. Thanks for the confidentiality on it. I told you to go negotiate an agreement to get everybody to shut up, and you won't shut up. Anyway, Emily Hytha, a spokesperson for Representative Michael Conaway, who is supposedly supervising the probe, said witness testimony was not shared improperly. Oh, okay. Well, that clears things up. The testimony was deemed committee sensitive, according to a committee source, but not classified. Okay, so what? They're claiming that it wasn't improper to share it because it wasn't classified? Any accusation that a witness's testimony was shared with another witness or their lawyer is unequivocally false, she said. We shall see. Robbins and Kramer declined to comment for the story. Ryan did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Witnesses who voluntarily testify before the House Intelligence Committee generally do so under assurances that members and staff will not share their testimony with the public or with other witnesses. Many witnesses are likely to cooperate with sensitive congressional investigations if they believe the information they share will get... they're less likely to cooperate if they think that the information will get out publicly. Okay, pretty obvious. Anytime information leaks out that's given to the committee behind closed doors, whether it's classified or committee sensitive or otherwise protected from public disclosure, it makes it harder for the committee to do its investigative job and get an honest and open testimony from the witness before it, said Jamil Jaffer, a visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution and former senior counsel on the House Intelligence Committee. This isn't the only leak accusation leveled against the House Intelligence Committee officials. The president has repeatedly skewered the top Democrat on the panel, Representative Adam Schiff of California, for supposedly sharing sensitive information with reporters. It's a charge Schiff denies. See, there we are. Everybody's denying everything. Last week, the New York Times reported that leaders in the Senate Intelligence Committee believe House investigators leaked the text messages from Mark Warner. Warner and Senator Richard Burr, the Democrat and Republican who lead the Senate committee, met with Speaker Paul Ryan to share their concerns. Accusations of improper coordination with the White House have dogged House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes, who was part of Trump's presidential transition team since the investigation's inception. Last March, Nunes suggested a whistleblower from within the intelligence agencies informed him that the name of Michael Flynn, the notorious spy and Trump's former national security advisor, who subsequently pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, was improperly unmasked in internal reports. It subsequently emerged that Nunes was fed a story not by any whistleblower, but by the White House officials, some White House officials, close to both Nunes and Flynn, prompting an ethics inquiry into Nunes himself that briefly derailed his leadership of the Russia probe. Briefly. More recently, Nunes gave an evasive and unequivocal answer to committee Dems who asked if Nunes had collaborated in any way with the White House on his memo, which presented a counter-narrative on the Russia investigation, highly convenient for Trump. And committee Dems have signaled that they still seek to verify Cohen's testimony. At a closed-door committee meeting on February 5th, a discussion of the Steele dossier pivoted to an aspect of it concerning Cohen, specifically ex-MI6 spy Christopher Steele's claim that Cohen had visited Prague to meet with a Russian operative during the summer of 2016. All the evidence we've seen is that Michael Cohen has never been in Prague, and never in the Czech Republic, and indeed was in California with his son at a campus in California at the time he was supposed to be meeting with this Russian agent, said Peter King, the Long Island Republican, according to the hearing transcript. Eric Swalwell, a California Democrat and former prosecutor, shot back, "Would you support subpoenaing Mr. Cohen's bank records, travel records, communication logs, etc., so we're not just taking him at his word, but we could actually verify that through a third party?" King said he would, but when Mr. Cohen was here, he was under oath, and you had your opportunity to ask him then. Schiff replied, yes, he did testify, and yes, we actually had the opportunity to ask him those questions. What we have not had the opportunity to do is determine whether he was telling the truth, because we have made requests to get documents, the subpoenaed documents, and the majority has been unwilling to support those requests to subpoena documents, and when that's the case, we have no way of verifying or disproving information. Schiff declined to comment for this piece. The exchange happened weeks after Ryan contacted Robbins concerning Cohen's testimony. So, that another hanging issue, and still out there, and I guess what King is arguing, well, if you thought he was lying, you should have said so then and there. But they preferred to try and prove things with documentation, and the majority was no help in doing that. Let's see. Just to wind things up here, I've got a number of tabs open. Let me tell you what they are. We got Brian Beutler's text this morning that the implication in the Stormy Daniels NDA that Trump sent her texts and sexts and maybe dick pics makes for a good and funny story. That's true. But, in my opinion, this is the confession that's likelier to get reporters riled up. What's he grabbed here? The parties hereby recognize and agree that substantial effort and expense have been dedicated to limit the efforts of the press, other media, and public to learn of personal and business affairs of Trump's. That was Michael Cohen, less than 2 weeks before the election, commenting on all that. So yeah, I guess acknowledging the Herculean efforts after all. Other things I need to acknowledge before the show closes out here. West Virginia teachers are back to school after a pay raise victory ends their 9-day strike. That, the reporting I have close at hand is from Talking Points Memo, but I have no doubt that you will find that covered very well on the front page of Daily Kos. Probably already happened, but we really do need to take a deep dive into how it happened and how it worked out at some point in the near future. Let's see. Other things we got to wind up with before closing out for the day. Anything else? I think we hit everything that I had open tab-wise, although who can say for sure. Yes. Oh, yes. I did mention to you, our Belarusian sex coach came to mind because Garance Frank Ruta, that's how it got mainstreamed. Garance is tweeting about it. Noting here, asking us, is it worth noting that Oleg Deripaska, former Manafort client and the subject of the Nastya Rybka alleged yacht tapes, is also a Russian aluminum tycoon? That is a good call in the wake of the imposition of sanctions, right? Anyway, an aluminum tycoon who stepped down as president of his firm shortly before Trump announced aluminum tariffs. That is a good point. Worth thinking about. I also did see via Twitter this morning, and we'll have to dig it up, The note that something unusual is happening over at the White House. Donald Trump is going out of the White House for dinner, and he's not going to the steakhouse at the Trump Hotel. And I guess that's planned for tonight. One of the rare instances of Trump stepping out and not going to one of his own properties. All it said, though, was that he was going to a private residence for dinner, which does happen and can happen. Here's a question for you. Oleg Deripaska maintains a private residence in Washington, D.C., but you would think that would seem too obvious, right, to go to Oleg Deripaska's house? I guess the question is he going there anyway, or is he going to Kellyanne Conway's house? Possibly, for dinner tonight, because that would not arouse suspicion, except for the fact that she happens to have, as a next-door neighbor, Oleg Deripaska. I don't know whether any of that is happening. It's purely speculation, but he is going out to a private residence. I don't know if it's been disclosed whose yet, and if it's one of those, like, oh my God, there is no end to the corruption with these guys. However, there is an end to today's show. That doesn't mean it's the end of Netroots friendly and Daily Kos friendly introspection into the news of the day. Of course, we are followed by the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Justice Putnam will be picking up all of the balls I dropped, and that has nothing to do with the sex that Donald Trump
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Here's where he'll be starting. Roger Stone back in the news, and for good reason. He'll follow up on that one. Look at this. On the rest of the menu, Trump's labor chief gets nailed for letting bosses steal workers' tips. Right-wing grifter Milo Yiannopoulos is not returning ticket money after a canceled event. What a grifter. And much, much more. Stay tuned.